Okay, so I don't know if you can see it very well, and I don't know how to make this larger.
So did you do on yours? Did you do like she said the 2 week thing to see if
So
you?
I didn't do the 2 week thing though because I've already been working with this lady.
So she's ready to sign.
So I haven't asked her if she wants to sign anything
Don't
yet.
ask her if she wants to. Tell her she needs to.
She needs to sign.
So I have two new buyers that came this weekend, and one's from New York, one's from San Francisco, and they said, we'd like to start working with you. And I said, okay, so in order to start working with me, I have a questionnaire I need you to complete because I don't want to disappoint. So I have a buyer questionnaire. I want to know everything. I want the name of your dog, but then I need to know how big the dog is too, because
Where's the buyer questionnaire?
I'll pull it up for you. So you want to find out, their first, middle, last name, because you're going to be doing it on a contract anyhow.
Sure.
You need to know their address. You need to know who you're working with to know if they're real. I've had some really bad people come to me. And it's interesting because after you look at enough buyer questionnaires, you're like, something's not right. A lot of scam agents, not agents, scam artists, people that were looking for something other than buying a house. So people who didn't have money or their money wasn't seasoned, or people looking for a free meal. People looking for a free meal. So weird. Um, so I always, tell them I have a buyer questionnaire. I have an agency disclosure. I have a buyer's commission and representation agreement. And I'm going to need to get from you your proof of funds and or your pre-approval on your loan and your lender contact. All these things I need to verify, and we need to establish our relationship in terms of what I'm going to do for you, what you should expect me to do, and what I need you to do in order for me to do my job for you. Because it's like being a football player. If you're a quarterback, your job is to get that ball downfield, right, through the goalposts.
Right.
Well, if somebody's getting in your way and they're not cooperating, you're never going to get through it. So, believe it or not, there's a lot of consumers that will get in your way, not do what they're supposed to do. And that's the first sign that they're not that person.
And then once you get, if you get a new potential client and they haven't done worked with a loan officer or whatever, then you get all that information, but then you give them your 3 leads of like here,
I give them my 3 referrals.
Once we get that, then we have a target.
Well, then you know what they can afford. Because how do you start looking?
Yeah.
Not only that, when in certain markets, listing agents don't even let anybody in the door without a pre-approval, which they shouldn't. Because if the buyer is not even pre-approved, then they're not a real buyer, unless they're cash and you've got a proof of funds. But if you don't have a proof of funds, why are you letting a stranger in your house? They could be casing it for all you know.
Yeah.
But the point is, they're obviously not prepared. At the very least, they're not prepared. So I don't take people or let people into other people's homes without making sure that we have a proper relationship set up. So we have agency assigned. That's required by the state of California for anything outside of a casual relationship. Well, taking a stranger into a stranger's house is not casual.
Right.
So that requires the agency disclosure, which automatically comes with the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement. So everybody's expectations are on the table so that that's how you build a good business. People are not misled or they feel disappointed or confused. Well, I've seen agents lose hundreds of thousands of dollars just based on disappointing clients because they don't do what they should do to make sure that the clients were on the same page and in agreement and understanding this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it.
Seems like it's I don't want to call it a difficult conversation to have with the client, but it is at least a conversation that has to go the right way for them to feel comfortable enough to sign all this paperwork and go through the steps necessary to have or to satisfy what you're looking for in the agreement. I guess I'm still trying to figure out how to have that conversation with people.
Okay. Well, we're going to work on that because I bring buyers in. I sit down. I never do it over the phone. And I've done it at Starbucks. I'll do it wherever it's comfortable for them, or have them come into an office and sit down. And first thing we do is we talk about their wants and their needs. I take notes. What is it they want? What is it they need? That's on the buyer questionnaire, by the way. I'll fill it in as I'm asking them. And I'll ask them a lot of questions so I can get to know them. And that's important. You're going to be working very closely and in a relationship that requires trust. And so that's the first thing that I do as we go through that. And then as we go through that, it's like, okay, so we're looking at a home for 900,000. That's a lot of money. It's probably one of the most significant purchases you're going to make in your lifetime, unless you're a handful of people that make purchases for more. But in order to do so, we need to have an understanding of my duties to you that I owe you, and you have the right to expect from me. What do I owe you? What sorts of duties? How does that work? And what do you owe me in terms of providing me the documentation that only you can provide with the lender that I need in order to do my job? So you're hiring me to do a job, and we need to make sure that I can do my job with an understanding. So we go through the agency disclosure first, which it's right here. So the agency disclosure, when you pull up your BRBC package, that's the very first document. It's the AD. It's required by the Civil Code. And it talks about that it's being provided in connection with a transaction, if it's for a leasehold or not. And when you enter into a discussion with a real estate agent regarding a real estate transaction, you should from the outset understand what type of agency, relationship, or representation you wish to have. So a seller's agent, okay, that's easy. Or a buyer's agent. Well, we'll just focus on buyer's agents. So the buyer's agent can, with buyer's consent, agree to act as agent for the buyer only. In these situations, agent's not the seller's agent, even if by agreement the agent may receive compensation for services rendered, either in full or in part from the seller. Once upon a time, that was called a sub-agent. If the seller paid, then the buyer's agent was a sub-agent of the seller, and the buyer did not have representation. And we changed it. And that's what they're kind of trying to undo now.
Okay.
But an agent acting only for a buyer has the following affirmative obligations to the buyer: a fiduciary duty. I usually spell out what a fiduciary duty means: of utmost care, integrity, honesty, and loyalty in dealings with the buyer. I remind the buyer, these are my obligations, my fiduciary duty to you. That is a legal term. Diligent exercise of reasonable skill and care in performance of the agent's duties, a duty of honest and fair dealing and good faith, a duty to disclose all facts known to the agent materially affecting the value or desirability of the property that are not known to or within the diligent attention and observation of the parties. And so what that means is, if I know that this property is going to be affected by a road that's going to be put in within the next 5 years because I've reviewed the general plan, I have a duty to disclose that. If there is something I know that could affect the buyer's desire or their value in the property down the road. So there was a piece of property I had a buyer looking at on the Ocean Bluff in Encinitas. And it had a 110-foot drop, and it had 8 inches from the edge of the house to the cliff, to the bluff edge. Now, most people remember just a couple years ago at Grandview Beach, there was a collapse of the bluff and 3 women were killed, a mother, a daughter, and a sister. And so our bluffs erode. So I pulled the Army Corps of Engineers report on the bluffs in Encinitas. I read 479 pages. Now, I'm not obligated to as a buyer's agent, but I think I should be, quite honestly. But you legally are not obligated to go dig like that. The buyer is supposed to be doing